great to see you. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
So I wanted to talk media and deals, and we'll get there. But I don't know if you want it. We've been talking election with everybody. So do you have any surprise views for us?
I don't have any surprise views, but I'm actually really optimistic that this might be an opportunity for someone to come in and unify the country. And I think that he listened to a lot of voices around this country that people weren't listening to about some of the challenges that we have. And I'm hopeful that he'll surround himself with really good people and start to solve some of the problems we have and create a unified country.
Let's talk media.
Media.
We had Richard Plepler here earlier, Tom Rutledge here earlier. They made some comments about Viacom, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But help us understand the way you have thought over the past couple of months about your two companies and the idea of putting them together.
Well, I think it makes sense at this point in time to explore whether it's in the interest of both companies to merge again. I think when you look at all the changes taking place in the industry, you've talked about some of them today, scale is going to matter. It's going to matter to the consumer who's looking to choose among a broad array of content. What do they want? The more content you can offer, the more choices you can give them, the happier they're going to be. It's going to matter to your advertisers who more than ever have to really advertise and reach their consumer across multiple platforms. And if you can give them a variety of demographics to go after and a variety of platforms to advertise on, you're going to be able to give them that one-stop shopping that they like. And scale matters because it's going to give us leverage, and we're going to need some leverage with some of our partners in this industry. So I think it makes sense to explore whether or not these companies can come up with a way to get together. But if they can't, they're two strong companies, and they will both survive, and they will both be great.
Is it possible they both remain independent?
Everything is always possible. We just saw that this week. So everything is possible, and I think the right thing will happen at the end of the day.
Let me ask you this. I saw Les Moonves at the Vanity Fair conference a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, he was on the stage with me, and I said to him, is there a reason that this shouldn't happen? And he said, because I'm too old and too rich.
Well, you're going to almost leave me speechless at that, but I would say, having grown up in the family that I grew up in, one is never too old. It's not about money, it's about getting the right thing done.
Lots of people have suggested that if this were to happen, one of the things that needs to happen is for Les Moonves, who runs CBS, who would run perhaps both of these institutions together, would want autonomy, need autonomy. Can you tell us anything about that conversation, if that's happening right now?
Well, what I can tell you is that the process in place has provided that there'll be independent committees at both companies to see whether or not a merger is the right thing to do, and that I am intentionally being left out of that for legal reasons. So I can't comment specifically on anything that's taking place at this point in time.
You spent a lot of time in the recent weeks inside Viacom, meeting people, talking to people. What has been the great lesson in all of this? What have you learned?
Well, two different questions. In terms of being inside Viacom, what I've learned is we have great brands, great assets, great people, and great opportunities. We have a lot of people who are so committed to bringing back the culture that used to exist in the company, that on many levels the culture already is there and people just want a chance to express it and run their businesses accordingly. So it's been a very invigorating, enlightening time for me.
You saw the AT&T deal get announced. You thought what?
I thought it makes sense. I think we're continuing to see the convergence of content and distribution. You look way back when you had, Time Warner acquiring AOL. I mean, who's going to acquire who? Is it content acquiring distribution? Is it distribution acquiring content?
Or somebody were to call you up and say, hey, think of this transaction. People like Reed Hastings, others have come out some have suggested. Long been speculation that CBS would have made a great partner with Time Warner. We're in the Time Warner Center right now, given the synergies of all of this. Were you a supporter ever of that idea?
I am a supporter of anything from our perspective, Viacom and CBS, anything that would allow us to expand our great portfolio of great content assets would make sense.
And what happens, do you think, everybody else? I mean, one of the things, when the AT&T deal happened, people sort of said to themselves, okay, you guys, CBS and Viacom, are going to merge. They said, what happens to Rupert Murdoch? And 21st Century Fox. They started to look at the landscape. How do you see this all playing out?
I think there's going to
The chessboard that is the media world.
Well, I don't really have a crystal ball, and if I did, I'm not sure I'd believe it. But I think that there's going to continue to be mergers, there's going to continue to be acquisitions, there's going to continue to be consolidation, whether it's within our verticals of content, whether it's outside our verticals of content. I think it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to be busy. You're going to have a great job.
It's going to be fun. Let me ask you this. Paramount Pictures.
Yes.
It sounds like you wanted them to keep Paramount Pictures. There seemed like there was a lot of money to be made if you had sold Paramount Pictures. Why keep it?
Because I think when you look at being in the business of creating content, you really want to have a studio that you can use to create content. And I think right now, people look at the studio sometimes as being a place where movies are made and a place where television shows are made. But if you look at what the studio of the future is going to be, you're going to be creating content across multiple platforms for the consumer to engage with. And you want to have a studio where you can create content for television, for movies, for Snapchat. You want to look at content as being way at the top of everything that you do and going across multiple platforms. So I think it's really important to have a studio and see how it evolves over time, especially if you're in the content creation business.
How do you find great content leaders? Everybody talks about Les Moonves. Is it a magic gut? Is it something that can be learned? You've spent a lot of time inside Viacom. You live in a family that has spent their life around content.
I think it's hard to find people who really know great content, but the people are out there. I think it's gut. It's great to have data and think about how you're going to create content. You talked about that a bit this morning. But I think at the end of the day, you need to surround yourself with people who understand what great content is, who understand what the consumer is looking for, how they want to engage with that content. It is not easy. That's why the movie business is hard. That's why you have X number of pilots every single year, X number of shows being taken off the network. It's really, really hard. Les is a genius at it, and he's clearly one of the best.
Did you think those two companies should have ever split?
Ooh, well, I actually was never a great proponent of the split of the two companies. I think that they had assets that could have worked really, really well together. That being said, I think the path that both companies went on could have been a little bit different under different leadership. But I think with where we are now, as I said, it makes sense to explore putting them back together again. And if that doesn't happen, these companies can stand on their own and they can be great.
Right. Let me ask you just a little bit about the family business. You've learned a lot from your dad over the years, and I'd love to understand what you think. He's a complicated man. His best qualities, if you will, and the things that you feel like you've learned the most from, and perhaps some of the more challenging ones.
Oh, that was very well phrased. Well, one thing I learned about my dad is perseverance, and I think that has stayed with me all the time. You never give up. You fight for what you believe in, and you fight for what you think is right, and he has never compromised on that. Another quality I've learned from him, which people will say is either good or bad, is that patience is the most overrated quality that exists. And somebody said to me recently, you can't solve every problem overnight. And I said, if I believed that, I wouldn't sleep. So I think he just taught me to fight for what's right, in terms of the business world. And, you and I have talked before about the importance of giving back to the community, and that was something also, if you're talking about life lessons, that my dad really taught me, not only about what we do personally, but about how we use our businesses to make an impact on the things that matter to us.
This has been a tough year, and I just wanted to ask, when you think back, is there a great lesson in all of this for you on a personal level? I don't know if you read the headlines. I don't know if...
I actually try not to read the headlines or the subtext. The great lesson is, I can't say it was a great year and that was the most fun year that I ever had. There were a lot of ups and downs. But if I take a look back on where I was last year and where I am today, the battles are over. My dad and I are working really hard to maximize the value of the assets we have at Viacom and at CBS. We care about both companies, even though the focus has been on, Viacom recently. Both companies obviously are really critical, to us. We have a great CEO at Viacom who I'm very excited about. He's done a super job running our international businesses. He embraces change and innovation. He knows how to build teams and get people to have a vision that everybody can buy into. He understands that it's all about the brand, back to what you said, and being a very brand-centric content company, and we have a great board who is a lot of strong independent voices and people who really understand the ultimate significance and importance of overseeing management and providing guidance. So it's been a tough year, but a year ago, to be sitting here today and be able to talk about all we accomplished, I don't think I ever could have imagined it. So lessons learned, I don't know. Fight for what you believe is right, because as hard as it is, don't give up.
What people don't know is that you spend a lot of your time when you're not thinking about CBS and Viacom at Advancit. And I don't think that this audience necessarily appreciates what that is all about. Tell us about it.
So Advancit Capital is a company I started in 2011 with my son-in-law, and we invest in early-stage companies in media, entertainment, and technology. And what we really focus on is how is technology changing the consumer experience. So we started paying a lot of attention to mobile because we felt that was one of the first platforms where you could really understand consumer behavior, where it was an on-demand environment. You could see what the consumer wanted to pull down rather than what they were being forced to accept. And we've continued to focus on that. We focus on new verticals of content. As you all know, my dad said content is king, and that's true, but the consumer is in fact controlling that kingdom. And we need to understand that consumer and know how to address their needs and what they're looking for.
You got involved in esports. We were talking with Roger Goodell a little bit earlier this morning, and there was a question about esports. What does that look like? I would have never imagined people would watch other people play video games.
Well, scary as it may sound, I started a company over 10 years ago called Games, which was people watching other people play esports in the movie theater. And people loved it, and we did it in Ann Arbor, and it was a great community, but it was very hard to have a financial model that worked because it was all hardwired. So fast forward 10 years later, people love watching other people play it. It's a phenomenon. We kind of understand it. But what you're seeing now is now the consumer wants to be more than just a spectator. They want to actually be able to engage and impact what's going on in a video game. So we recently invested in a company called Outpost, which is creating a platform where the players become performers, the spectators become an audience and can actually talk about what's going on during the game. They can talk about, they can cheer on, they can boo. And then they're actually creating a game which is like Lost meets Hunger Games, where the consumer is actually going to be able to impact what takes place in the game and impact the outcomes. So I love it because even though we do this at Advancit, this is really the future of media and entertainment. I really believe we're going to have to be engaging with our consumer on multiple platforms and having a deeper involvement and interactivity with them. And we see things first at Advancit.
How much of this, though, is about gamifying content? So when you look in, for example, we've talked about the assets at Viacom, some of the assets at Nickelodeon. How much of that is about shifting even perhaps away from the sort of linear model that we've grown up with into something that's so very different?
Well, I think there is a shift. I don't think it's just gamification, but I think when we look at content creation these days, we have to look at it not in terms of linear creation, but in terms of creation across platforms on multiple platforms. And you have to look at creating your content and taking your brands and creating different types of content for different platforms. So some of it is going to require interactivity. Some of it is going to require gamification. Some of it is ultimately going to require you're allowing the consumer to actually have an impact on the kind of content you're being created in real time, which you can actually do now. So I think linear content continues to exist, but when you look at your brands, you have to look at it in terms of creating different kinds of content across multiple platforms.
And how do you feel? We talked to Tom Rutledge about the bundle and the unbundling. And one of the companies, Viacom, is one that people say is challenged in terms of that unbundling issue.
I did hear that referenced earlier today. So I have a few comments. First is, I do believe that bundling solves a problem. It's an efficient way to distribute content. It's an efficient way for the consumer to get content. But I think the concept is going to evolve over time. I think we used to create bundles so that we could push down content to the consumer. Now the bundles are going to have to be created so that the consumer can pull down the content they want. They are going to be skinnier bundles, but not necessarily skinny, because I mean on DirecTV's new bundle, we have 11 networks. So there's still going to be skinnier and larger bundles, but the consumer is going to have a big role in determining what those bundles are. And I think if we get it right, some of those cord nevers might even come back, because what they want is control. They want to be the filter of the content they want. They don't want us dictating to them anymore. And that's what they're going to get.
And how important is it for you to have a direct relationship with the customer? This goes to the AT&T transaction, but there's an argument to be made that HBO is already developing that direct relationship without having to actually own the wire.
I think having a direct relationship with your consumer is critical. Do you need to do a transaction like is on the table now? I don't think you do, but you do need to find a way to be in contact with your consumer all the time. As well as the consumer wanting more control over their lives, they're very fickle. So if you're not where they are and you're not where they're headed before they get there, you're going to lose them. But I do believe there are multiple ways to develop that relationship.
Right. I wanted to open for questions, but I wanted to ask you before I did, how do you spend your time between CBS, between Viacom, between Advancit? You have some charitable endeavors.
Every day.
Maybe this year has just been a very different year.
Well, this year would have a whole category that you didn't include, so we'll leave that out. Unfortunately, it doesn't come back. But I go where I'm needed. I mean, Advancit is very much what I do on a regular basis. We have our partners meetings. We meet with our portfolio companies. Right now, obviously, I'm spending more time at Viacom than I am at CBS. Through it all, I'm very engaged in the nonprofit activities that I'm involved with. It kind of keeps you sane and keeps you feeling like you're doing something that really matters. And every day is different, and days are longer than they used to be.
Let's take some quick questions from the audience. I see a hand right there.
Vincent David, American Express. So you talked a lot about content and your consumers and data. So I'd be curious to hear from you, what's the one piece of information about your consumers that you would really like to know more about and that you have a hard time acquiring today?
It's hard to say what the one thing is you want to know more about. And I think there are ways of getting that data. I mean, from my standpoint of a content creator, you obviously want to know what it is they want to see. And I know somebody said earlier you can't use data to create content, but you can use it to understand what it is that they're interested in, what it is that they're focused in. I want to know where they're headed, what they're doing next. I mean, I guess that's the simple answer. What are they doing next, and how can I get there before they get there? And if data can be one role in figuring that out, that's what we want to do. And just one other point, from an advertising standpoint, and you know why I might mention that to you, Viacom right now has done this incredible job with this data-driven marketing, where you know everything about your consumer. So it's not just about being able to market and advertise to a specific demo. It's about being able to actually advertise to the person who is going to be using your product. You know where they are. You know how much money they're spending. You know what they're spending their money on. And we've done some fantastic partnerships, including one with American Express, to really help us understand who our consumer is so that we can drive more value with our advertisers. So from an advertising perspective, that's the one thing I would want to know. From a content perspective, it's what do they want next and can I get it to them?
By the way, what do you think about the advertising market for TV? You see so many channels now, and media writ large, people are subscribing. They're paying. There seems to be a move now where people are willing to pay for content in ways they never were before. Ultimately, and you've seen more and more of the advertising spend go online to the Facebooks of the like. Does that shift back? What happens?
I think it continues to evolve over time, but I think advertising is going to continue to grow because more than ever, when you look at the proliferation of content out there and the proliferation of brands, you have to be relevant to your consumer. You have to be able to get your message directly to that consumer, and you're going to have to advertise to do that.
Live TV, by the way, we were talking to Roger Goodell before about ratings with football. Do you think that the linear live TV is dead?
No, I do not think linear live TV is dead.
Had to ask. Let's sneak in one more final question if we could. I knew there was a couple of hands, or at least I thought there were. Maybe there were not. On that note, let me thank Shari Redstone for coming.
Thank you very, very much.
So much.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
I did appreciate it. Thank you.